A court in Vietnam has upheld the death sentence for a real estate tycoon found guilty of embezzling nearly $20 billion. 68-year-old Truong My Lan was sentenced to death in April after being found to have secretly controlled one of Vietnam's largest banks, withdrawing loans and cash worth more than $67 billion. Following a review, the High People's Court in southern Ho Chi Minh City determined there was no basis to reduce Lan's death sentence. But under Vietnamese law, Ms Lan could have her sentence commuted to life imprisonment if she pays back at least 3/4 of the assets, a sum of nearly $15 billion. Well, Derek Wallbank is Bloomberg's managing editor for breaking news in Southeast Asia and joins us now from Singapore. Derek, thank you for your time. How big a story has this been and the interest in the outcome of this appeal?
Gemma, this is a massive story in Vietnam. This is somebody who was in the popular imagination throughout Vietnam. She was a bit of a rags to riches story. She came up from selling wares in a local market, rose along with Vietnam's boom times, and eventually became somebody whose buildings dot the skyline of Ho Chi Minh City. Literally, if you want to see evidence of her legacy, all you have to do is stand on the street and look around, and you can see any number of places that were put up by her. So she was someone who was held in the popular fascination in Vietnam, and this really, her arrest sparked a massive bit of consternation in the country. There was a run on Saigon Commercial Bank with people pushing through the doors trying to get their money out after she was arrested. It lasted for days. It was only sort of stopped when the government effectively took control of the lender, right? So it has been a big thing. It's also been, I think, a flagstone part of the larger Vietnamese push to try and root out corruption in the country that has ensnared a great many people, including, if my math is right, 2 presidents and 3 deputy prime ministers.
Now, as to the court's reasoning to uphold the death sentence here, what was said?
Well, you know, this is a protracted process, right? There is, as you mentioned in the lead-in, a way for her to possibly get this sentence changed, and that was not met yet. I have to emphasize yet because this is not necessarily done. She still has options. She still may be able to raise this amount of money, and there is a possibility that that the court may come back later and say that she can get this commuted. So to use an expression, there are cards left for her to play in this case, but it still drags on at this minute.
As to her crime, how did she manage to obtain this money and so much of it?
Well, and it is quite a lot of money, isn't it? I mean, you're talking about 3 times as much as Malaysia's 1MDB scandal, $4 billion more than crypto entrepreneur Sam Bankman-Fried's fraud case, right? And it really comes down to, if I were to simplify, a lot of this idea of endemic corruption that Vietnam has kind of targeted, the idea that somebody's here and working with somebody there and doing all sorts of approvals for reasons that don't include the validity of the project in question. And so there really is a sort of sense that that this is something that Vietnam needs to kind of get through and get out. I would note 2 things here. One is that Vietnam has been one of the prime places that people have looked to park money and assets amid the U.S.-China trade war, right? It's seen as a possible safe harbor. And so there has been a lot of inflow in there. At the same time, this and other cases have complicated the economic prospects in Vietnam for individuals. You know, approvals for permits have slowed. Financing for big real estate projects have slowed because a lot of people, you know, if you're talking about thousands, tens of thousands of civil servants being caught up in this, no one wants to be next on that list. And so there has been a bit of a slowdown there, even as there is a rapid kind of move in to Vietnam from the international financial community.
Now, Derek, with that option to have the death sentence downgraded to a life sentence if she pays back 3/4 of the sum, is that unusual to have such an option, and what has been paid back so far?
Well, it is a feature of Vietnamese law. It's not something that I think is replicated across a lot of legal systems, but there is a carve out. And it was one of the things when we were looking at this case originally and sort of planning for it that we had to take into account as we were covering it, right? Because it does have this carve out. She is trying to raise the sums to bring this back. She has expressed confidence that she will be able to pay it back yet, but as yet the full restitution has not been made, and the sentence remains as it is. She also, in a separate but somewhat related case, has a sitting life sentence. So that is also in play there as well, were this to get commuted further down, but she still has work to do to peel back the death sentence.
And what impact has this had on the Vietnam economy?
Well, yeah, I mean, I flicked at it a little bit. This is really, as I say, this is the space where people have thought was going to be a great beneficiary, and indeed it has, of the U.S.-China trade war. This is a place where there is cheaper manufacturing labor, cheaper costs of labor. There are a lot of companies that have rushed into Vietnam that are doing big business there. Samsung is one, But at the same point, if you are a smaller business looking to scale up, right? I talked with one business leader whose company is based just outside of Ho Chi Minh City, who was saying, look, we had a lot of plans that were ready to go. We wanted to expand a facility. But now we're having trouble getting just basic permits signed off. People just do not want to put pen to paper. And so it really is kind of clogging up a lot of those basic things that would have been kind of easy lifts. So broad strokes macro side, you are still seeing that investment. This hasn't changed that. On the micro side, this has certainly complicated a lot of investment decisions in Vietnam.